Now, South Africa remains on an adjusted lockdown level 3, rather. President Cyril Ramaphosa made the announcement last night. Let's just get the biggest takeaways of that with eNCA reporter Silindelo Masikane. Colleague, good to have you and good morning to you. Now, I'm sure, I think South Africans had probably expected, the worst from yesterday. And I suppose because people probably anticipated that it would be lockdown level 4, but that wasn't the case.
That wasn't the case, Dumelo, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that our country is in a very precarious situation when it comes to our economic conditions. We know that the first wave of the coronavirus infections certainly had a devastating effect on businesses, many of them not even opening up once the economy started opening again. And so, of course, as we were anticipating this latest family meeting, there was a lot of talk around possible lockdown level 5, possible lockdown level 4, and that is due to the high rate of infections that we've been experiencing since New Year's Eve, should I say. In particular, we are seeing a high number of infections breaching the 20,000 mark on a daily basis. So I think South Africans were anticipating that there was certainly going to be stricter lockdown regulations put in place. However, the eNCA, after a number of consultations with various sectors in society, have decided to remain at lockdown level 3 with, of course, adjusted recommendations. We know, following that speech, that the president said that since New Year's Day, we have recorded nearly 190,000 new coronavirus infections. The country has also now recorded more than 4,600 COVID-19 deaths, and we have recorded more than 33,000 deaths and more than 148,000 people who have been admitted into hospital. We also are seeing that the need for oxygen in terms of people who are being infected is also on the rise. So the president, in terms of remaining at lockdown level 3, says that this has to do with a number of factors. Certainly, after many consultations, that it seems that remaining at lockdown level 3 for the next couple of weeks is where we should be. Let's just take a listen.
Based on the recommendations of the National Coronavirus Command Council, Cabinet has decided to maintain the country on adjusted level 3. Most of the measures that were announced on the 28th of December 2020 will remain in place. Given the risk of widespread transmission, most indoor and outdoor gatherings will not be permitted. This includes social gatherings, religious gatherings, political events, traditional council meetings, and gatherings at sports grounds. As before, this does not include funerals and other limited exceptions as detailed in the regulations, such as going to restaurants, museums, and gyms. Funerals may not be attended by more than 50 people, and there needs to be social distancing, hand washing, and mask wearing at funerals. The hours of curfew will now start at 9 p.m. and end earlier at 5 a.m.
And Slee promised us 20 million vaccines, but still short on the detail.
Quite short on the detail, Jane, in terms of when we're expecting the mass-scale rollout of vaccines. However, as you heard in that clip right there, is that the fact that we are seeing that gatherings are certainly super spreader events. Many of these are remaining closed, should I say. The only gatherings that we can have here in South Africa are funerals, and that is, of course, limited to 50. And, of course, over the past couple of days, we know the president has been consulting, especially with religious leaders, the religious sector in particular. We saw just over this weekend in Sebokeng, our colleague Manqoba Mkhunu in Sebokeng, where we saw basically a defiance of these lockdown regulations, where we are seeing a number of church groups who are insisting on gathering. And what scientists have told our eNCA is that these gatherings where we have people in one place for a long extended period of time are potential super spreader events. Let's just take a listen to the president once more.
Research has identified several risks that arise from religious services and other gatherings. These include the risk associated with enclosed spaces, large groups, close proximity to others, staying for long times in one place, and loud talking as well as singing. We will continue our discussions with our religious leaders on how best to safely meet the desire of many of our people to worship in congregation while working together to preserve life. We have communicated this to our religious leaders, and we will be having further discussions with them.
And Slee, I mean, the president has emphasized that, he understands that obviously South Africans, in the spirit of Ubuntu, do want to support loved ones or, associates when it comes to funerals. But, I mean, he emphasized there that they are a death trap. These funeral events are a death trap.
Certainly, Dumelo. I think it's one of the big takeaways from the speech last night from the president, really trying to drive in the fact that we know that as Africans in particular, when it comes to burying our loved ones, when it comes to paying our respects to our loved ones, it's something that we are very much religious about. But in terms of the conditions the coronavirus pandemic has now put our country under, it's just simply, it just cannot happen that we can have these large numbers of people at funerals, at weddings, or any kind of gathering. And what we've noticed over the past couple of weeks, especially over the festive season, in particular in the Eastern Cape, is that these funerals are certainly leading to large numbers of people getting infected. Let's take a listen.
I would like to take a moment to specifically address the issue of funerals, which have consistently been identified time and time again as so-called super spreader events or super spreader moments. Providing a fitting send-off for a departed loved one is deeply ingrained in all of us. It is part of our culture. There are certain rituals that we perform in line with our respective cultures and traditions, not just at the funeral itself, but also many days before the funeral. But these are all things we simply cannot continue doing. We are in the grip of a deadly pandemic, and all those activities that would normally take place are just increasing our exposure to risk for ourselves and for the bereaved family and for our own families at home. Many people keep repeating and reporting that many of those who are now passing away were infected at funerals. Let us pay heed to this. There will be a time when we can go to the home of the deceased to pay our respects and to sympathize properly with our neighbors, our friends, and our relatives. Funerals have become a death trap for many of our people.
So lots to think about there. Thanks for that update on the President's speech last night, Slee. Now let's get the latest COVID-19 numbers. Just over 15,000 new cases have been recorded. The cumulative total of infections is in excess of 1.2 million.
Well, 460 more people have died from the virus, bringing the total death toll to more than 33,500. About 973,000 people have recovered from COVID-19, and more than 7 million tests have been conducted.